So we're going to talk a little bit about communication processes, and this is part of the cycle of the business of architecture. So this session today is going to talk a little bit about the business aspects of our practice. And beginning with communication, we're going to start with the basic premise that presentations are stupid. Presentations are bad. They're awful ways to communicate your stories, and yet they are the single most common way that we are often asked to present ourselves to clients and to others. Presentations are often very typical. You have the false platitudes of, we're so glad to be here, thank you so much for the honor to be here in front of you. You have to express your commitment, we're committed to you. We're going to present all of our strengths and our workload analysis and our schedules and reaffirm our commitment to you. And you can basically put your name in the little slide bar and put another firm's name right in there, the next firm's name right in there, the next firm's name right in there, because it's all the same. Too often, we sit back and we talk about ourselves. And that's what we see all the time in architectural presentations. We're talking about ourselves, what we are, who we are, what we have, what we do, what we know. And it's all literally blah, 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 all about yourself. So imagine if you're the client sitting behind that, watching that over and over and over again, all you hear about is yourself. Clients want to experience something different. When you're presenting and communicating and trying to showcase yourself from a business perspective, they need to understand why. People buy the why when you do things. They want to be able to see and understand you. If it wasn't about that communication style, chemistry between people, they would select you purely on facts. But this is an opportunity for them to get to know you and predict your future performance and understand how it's going to be like to work with you based on your connection to them. And it's important that we recognize that people can be interesting. I say that tongue in cheek, but too often we say the same perfunctory things in every presentation, in every conversation, and we don't recognize or take the chance or opportunity to say, let's do something different. Let's be unique. People can be interesting, and it's those unique moments that you create connections to clients, where clients can see you in a different light and remember you. And this is why the facts don't always work. All the statistics in the world won't always connect with a client. All the numbers in the world won't work. They're just hazy back images. They can support ideas, they can support concepts, they can support your conversation, but facts alone don't always work. What you need is that emotional connection to someone. The people have to understand who you are and want to work with you. If you recognize being hired as an architect to do a project oftentimes entails a year and a half of design, a year and a half of construction. You could be working with the same people for 3 to 4 years. It's like a mini marriage. They have to know you and feel you and make sure they connect with you on an emotional level. And you need to know your audience. You need to understand your audience in the approach to these presentations and these communication structures. You have to understand what it is that they are bringing to the table, what they have, and what their proclivities are. When you do that, you have to recognize that you aren't the star. And that's hard for a lot of architectural firms or anyone in professional services to understand. You're not the main star in these conversations. The audience is the star. You need to understand that they are going to decide whether or not what you say resonates and what you say or do matters. They are often quick to find arrogance. They're quick to find the self-centeredness. If you talk so much about yourself, you take away the opportunity for them to connect to you and listen to their stories and their issues. One example I'll give you, we partnered one time with a world-famous architect out of Germany on a major project where the client loved our firm. We were well-connected, well-established, well-positioned, ready to walk in and win the day. And that client came in, that architect came in from Germany, didn't want to rehearse, didn't want to practice, didn't want to participate in any of our conversations, didn't want to know the client. They were the star. And the arrogance that came out of his mouth was so strong that the clients came to us afterwards going, where'd you find this guy? Well, he's a world-famous architect that's designed buildings in Harvard, but he'll never work in Palm Beach County, apparently. So arrogance can be a real problem. And when you look at things, you gotta look at things from a shared point of connection. So you're talking to your audience, you know your audience, you have to understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to do. And I use this example where we as a firm were pursuing a project that was all about research. And we were competing against firms that were vastly stronger and superior to us in terms of their portfolio and their experiences. But we approached that project from a shared area of understanding, and we came to them about curing human disease for our families, which is part of their mission statement. We didn't show buildings, we didn't even introduce ourselves. We talked about curing human disease. We created a shared understanding to their mission and made them the star. We won that project. That was a magnificent project. It didn't get built, unfortunately. That's today's world. It was right before the recession, but we won the job based on having a shared place of understanding. So I'm going to move into a conversation about approach and how you approach certain these things, to how you approach these communication processes. So I talked a lot about understanding your audience. When you understand your audience, you got to look at what are the politics associated with that group. It could be a university. You could have a facilities director, the small business coordinator, the sustainability coordinator, the VP of business affairs, and the dean may have one little voice. So while you're designing a school of engineering where you think the engineering is the most important thing, all these other constituents have different outcomes. They have different wants and needs. You have to first, in your approach a conversation, is understand what it is that they are doing. What's in their minds? What's their demographics? What do they bring to the table? You should know, the best of your ability, what are they like? Where are they? Why are they here? What is their purpose in the selection process? Doing that research ahead of time and understanding those hot buttons, what keeps them up at night, what problems do they encounter, and they each individually have a different issue. You should know all that prior to putting together a presentation, even trying to put together a presentation to convince a client to trust you. Connecting is by understanding their world. That's what I get to, I talk about a lot, is the research you have to do. And sometimes you don't get a chance to meet with all those potential prospective clients. So you have to do your research, find out from others, talk to the contractors that have worked on the campus, talk to the engineers that have worked there before, the geotechs, the land planners, maybe some land use attorneys. Get as much information as you can before you ever start to think about what your conversation is going to be. And I talk about this a lot, is when you want to engage in conversations with these clients, the presentations are very structured and organized, but if you have opportunities to engage them into the conversation, pull them into it, and exchange ideas, you can connect to them so much faster than just a straight out presentation. If you have that flexibility and opportunity to do that, I would advise you always try to bring them into the conversation. So I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about how do you prepare your presentations themselves, what goes into these presentations, and what you should think about as you prepare these presentations. So the first part about this is define your big idea. This is critical. As I know all of you, if you've done presentations in the public sector, or even the private sector, you have all kinds of perfunctory things you have to talk about. What's your workload analysis? As if anyone's going to ever get up there and say, oh, I'm too busy to do your job, I'm here anyway. No one's going to ever say that. You have to define your big idea first. Put all the perfunctory things to the side. What is their biggest business problem or issue that they face as an organization? And how can you solve that problem? That creates your win theme, your ideas. Never start your presentation online. This may go against some sustainability principles, but turn the computer off. Computers oftentimes lead you to linear thinking. You have a slide, you correct the slide, you go to the next one, you start doing a process, and the computer itself pushes you in a certain direction. Be messy. Get things out in the open. Strategize, collaborate, throw ideas out there. Get as much relevant content to support your big idea. Your solution may be something unique. A good example of this I'll share with you is we went after a project at Florida Gulf Coast University for an engineering building. They needed a slew of different things for their facility. They wanted to work their way into a Carnegie classification in the future, a certain kind of research classification. But the big idea was the dean wanted equity for women in engineering. That was not in the RFP, that was not in anything written, that was not in their master plan, but it was the single driving force behind the project, behind the scenes. So we worked our tail off to make sure we can create enough content and ideas. How can we as architects create a facility that can empower equity for education? And we worked like crazy to map that out along a wall. And we ignored all the schedules and the perfunctory things, the org charts, that all came later. We got as much information for the big ideas. We challenge each other. Are we solving their big idea? Are we creating some differentiation between us and the other architects that are going to be interviewing for this project? And we brainstormed. But big thing about the brainstorming process is it's important to brainstorm together, but it's also important to brainstorm alone and bring ideas back to the table, because inevitably in a group setting, you'll eventually have people that will dominate a conversation. Some folks, I don't know, like who would have a loud voice and want to talk a lot and be on stage. Some folks will actually dominate conversations. So it's important to make sure you give space and everyone come back with new ideas to the table. And it's important to generate a lot of ideas that support your big idea. Generate a lot of concepts. Quantity is important. People say, no, I want the perfect idea. You're not gonna get the perfect idea day one. You're gonna map out all your big concepts and work your way towards the quantity first. And then you start to organize. And when you start to organize it by having your big idea, maybe your big business ideas at the top. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5 big ideas. And on the right, your matrix will have all that perfunctory, your org chart stuff, your workload analysis, your approach to sustainability, all the things that everybody asks you. Put that on the side, and then you start to map your ideas. When you start to do that, you start to filter out all the good ideas for the exact ones that fit that person, that issue, that moment in time. So you might eliminate something that might seem like so necessary because you're doing something that's specific to the point at hand, the audience at hand. In our case, in that scenario at Florida Gulf Coast, it was about equity for women engineering. We filtered out ideas about our high bay cranes for experiments. That's nice, that's a requirement. Everyone's gonna have that. How do we create learning environments that create a social infrastructure that enhance equity? That became the exact points. Try to maintain your self-control between those points. Don't have more than 3 to 5 big business points you're solving, big issues for your clients. I actually almost always advocate for 3, no more than 3. What are the top 3 things that they're gonna recognize or remember from you? Because you want them to hear it and understand it. You want them to feel that confident when you're done speaking that you have solved their ideas, that you've captured their concerns. You wanna make sure that they have attention, comprehension, belief, and recollection, right? You want to create that sense that they believe in what you say and can recall a couple of those key points. They'll never remember everything you say. There's no way on earth. There are 5 people presenting the same concepts, ideas. They'll never remember it. They'll just remember how they feel. And you want them to remember, you want them to have a belief and a feeling of belief in you. So part of that goes in how you present that is dealing with storylines. And storylines are powerful because they help you make human connections. They're one of the easiest ways to help you get connected to your ideas to these clients. Stories feature transformation. So this is all from Nancy Duarte has a book process for creating slides, and she talks about storylines. And storylines are critical because they help you connect to individuals. They help the individuals connect to you and your ideas. And they have a clear structure. So if stories have a clear structure, use it. Open your presentation with a hook. Never get up there and start talking about, hi, my name is Ignacio. I'm so honored to be here today. I'm so glad you've invited us to be part of this because I really want your cash and your money into our bank accounts so we can design our building for you. You're never gonna say that stuff, but all they ever hear is that false platitudes. Start strong. Walk up and start strong. So your presentation has to be organized like a story with its power hook at the beginning. Build your middle with different ideas. Just a simple example, here a conversation where you can use visuals to create the need for action. Contrast their existing condition, and this is an example of a project at Miami-Dade we were looking at, of existing hallway with what could be. Make them feel that they need to have this. Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about how a hallway can be useful. Obviously, as architects, we're going to design things. We're going to show them. That can be part of your story. Part of your storyline can be how you design certain things and create an opportunity for them that gets them excited. Don't downplay the idea that your designs aren't part of the story. They definitely are. But you have to emphasize what the benefits of the design are. Don't just relate to the architecture as pretty or nice or ooh, wow moment. Why is it important? How does it connect the dots? Walk them through that so it's easy for them to understand why your project can solve issue A, B, or C. And make the ending powerful. Again, the story structure, you start with a hook, you develop the middle, which has the need, the tension, the ideas, and then you end with something powerful. You have a call to action that restates the benefits to them, that benefits their sphere of influence and can benefit the world, because they are the star, not you. They are going to separate and inspire the world. They're going to create women engineers that take over the world. They're going to cure human disease. You're going to set them up for success. And that is your closing, your power close. It's not a thank you and blessed to be here, so none of that stuff. You're reiterating why it's important to them. So you end strong and power strong with that ending. Your endings can be imaginative. Sometimes you don't have a design solution yet. We gave an interview one time where we actually told the jury to close their eyes, and we told a story about what a senior residence can be for a family putting their elder into a senior care home, and what that experience could be with the right kind of design. You can make them imagine the potentials and the possibilities. So you balance emotions with storyline, with vivid imagery, or with possibilities. When you're getting together to put together these ideas and these slides, one thing I'll say all the time is that you've got to move to a point where it's clear and concise. There's oftentimes too much stuff on the wallpaper on the sides. So Disney always talks about in our studios, we write our stories. We don't write our stories, we draw them. You want to do the same thing. You want to avoid a lot of text. You want to get slides that people can understand in 3 seconds. This is from Nancy Duarte and her teachings about design in slides and communications. Like, things got to be simple for people to understand. And unfortunately, we use PowerPoint all the time, so it's one of the easiest mediums. So here's an example of, we see this all the time, is a lot of text on a screen. The parts of a bicycle is an arbitrary example of something. If you took that and changed it into a graphic, does it pass the glance test, right? Do you understand the parts of a bicycle in 3 seconds now versus having it all written out? I have a healthcare global practice leader that does presentations, and I swear he puts a dissertation on a slide every time. I'm like, no one's gonna read that. It's gonna put you to sleep. Bring it to life. Here's a conversation about business challenges for a corporation. You're listing other challenges to demonstrate your understanding of their issues. Well, what if you did it graphically and you speak to it? You speak to the issues versus having it all mapped out. It's an emotional response that grabs their imagination and vision into you versus having them try to read a slide. And too oftentimes we put all the text in the slide in the world, and then we'll sit there and we'll read it. And we'll read it to them like they're idiots. They can read too. Get rid of the text, simplify it. They need to understand it in 3 seconds. Try to storyboard one idea per slide. Don't put 1,000 things on a slide. My old boss continues to do that when he does presentations. He puts all kinds of stuff on a slide, like 5 different things, and stays in the one image forever and points to it all the time. This is wallpaper. You're telling a story. They need to be focused on your voice. Avoid the visual cliches. We have all these visual cliches, and challenge yourself to think differently. So if you're gonna do a target or a goal, instead of doing a bullseye, look at a maze. Try to look different than what the average architect's gonna do when they come in to present. Be different in how you prepare your presentations. Arrange all the slides with great care. Once you've gone through all your processes and you're organizing it, arrange it with care so it fits your story. You will always have those perfunctory moments. You'll always have the org charts and the resumes you have to slip in, but you can do it in a way where it fits your big ideas, your 3 big business ideas. And make sure those moments are powerful. You want to talk about quality, think of it non-traditional imagery that powers an image, that gets them excited about it. You may be talking about architecture quality, but I'm showing beautiful grapes for a vineyard, about the quality of the wine. You associate something subconsciously with what they understand in their careers and their lives as potential connection to your conversation. You can do unity of color. Color is a great way to connect the dots. Keep it consistent so you're not changing a lot of things from side to side, from color to color. So your icons or graphic symbology is all part of the unity, part of the colors, all connected. So you can have continuity. It's easy for them to connect their mindsets to the conversations. And turn words into diagrams. We talked about that, about the bicycle example, the business challenges example, but turn words into diagrams, less text, more visuals. That keeps them looking at the visual for a second and then turning to you and having the conversation. You don't want them sitting on the screen staring. You want them talking to you in that one-on-one. So now we're going to talk about the delivery process and how you deliver the presentations. And everything I'm talking about today is the synthesis of 2 different sociologists and 3 different professional coaches that we have used in the course of the last 20 years. So the delivery is the hard part. We think all the hard part was putting the whole presentation together. It's mega hard to get in front of people and actually present. It's difficult to put yourself out there and have yourself judged. So hard that some people equate it with death, which I think is insane, but people equate public speaking with death. But public speaking will not necessarily result in bodily harm. You can go out and present and do a good job without it being a fearful moment. It's important to tell your colleagues and your employees that when you can present, when you can have a communication with clients, when they can feel you and understand you and you can tell your story, it promotes their professional growth. Nothing can lead to faster promotion than being able to convince a client to hire you, to get that trust and bring work into the door. That's a quick way to get promoted in a company. I tell people all the time as I work with them, get public, be a speaker, get over that fear of public speaking. It does promote professional growth, it'll benefit your organization, and it develops future opportunities for you. Tell everyone about that. They need to know that this is a pathway to success. So I'm going to talk about style, and this is important. This is the third part of the concept, is the whole idea about delivery of style. I did this with the JLI Institute 2 years ago, I think it was. I did the JLI Institute talking about style. So when you are going to present, you are going to be experienced. So you are seen, heard, and experienced, and you will be judged. No human being, no matter what they say about how altruistic they are, does not judge you when you walk into the room. So you have a jury of 5 people, you walk in, they're going, oh, that guy looks arrogant. That guy, he looks kind of smarky, I don't know. You're judged. It's just human nature. It's sad, but it's human nature. So you have to understand that and be prepared for it. Your attire counts. I tell some emerging professionals all the time, your attire counts. If you're going to be presenting to clients, how do they dress? What are they used to in their sphere of influence? Don't take for granted that, oh, I'm just going to be in shorts or casual if that's not what they respect. Know your audience, because their preconceptions are going to determine their reality of you. The detractors. When you want to create positive perceptions, you have to get rid of the ums, the likes when you're presenting. Those are nervous moments. Those nervous moments go away by one thing only, rehearsing. It's the only way to get rid of the ums, the likes, the so's, to practice what you're saying, to know it so well that it becomes common knowledge to you. So your nonverbals communicate. If you saw Dr. Amy Cuddy, I think she spoke at AI National one time and she has a TED Talk. She talks a lot about the nonverbals and how they communicate. People will believe how you say something sometimes over what you say. And the proof of that is politics. You have people saying amazing, passionate moments and getting really excited and revving up a crowd, but what they're saying is ludicrous. But the power of their emotions gets you riled up and gets you excited. People can believe what you say, how you say something over what you actually say. So it's critically important that you recognize how your nonverbals communicate to people. And there are subconscious, documented studies on how your subconscious efforts or subconscious moves can power credibility, integrity, expertise, respect, enthusiasm. How you do things actually conveys those subconscious moments. It sounds ludicrous, but it's real. So we all know body language issues has certain conversation pieces, right? You have your arms crossed, you demonstrate defense or anger, even if it's, hey, I'm just freezing. Doesn't matter. What they perceive is anger or concern or fear. We have cues from society, and our body language doesn't lie. There's nothing that you can, it tells the truth whether you want to or not. So people point, so if I'm talking about something and I start pointing, even if it's to be really nice about, oh, we are partners in the board, we're friends, and if I'm pointing, there's a subconscious symbol there of anger and power, even though my words are nice and soft. Becky and I have partnered so well together, and I'm pointing, subconsciously that's a negative. If that's a jury, that's a subconscious negative, not a positive. You have to be very careful about it. Because you can't lie with your body language. Body language tells the truth, no matter if you're trying your best to overcome it. So every way you stand has an issue. So if you're standing really close like this, like Dr. Janet Sanders calls this the Boy Scout pose, where you just kind of have your legs together, you're unbalanced. You have no confidence. Someone can push you over with a finger, you'd fall right over. So having the strength of your pose is important. Your body language has to have strength and power when you're conveying credibility. When you're trying to make a connection. Recognize, I tell this to everyone in the firm, you have something to tell people. You're there for a reason. It's not an accident that you're there. You know something worth knowing, or you wouldn't be in front of a client. You're an architect, you're an engineer, you're an interior designer, you know something. You're gonna give something of value to these folks. Know that. Obviously know the audience, we talked about that. But have foundation when you're speaking. Have foundation where you're sitting, how you stance, and how you're talking to folks. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. And remember that you need to be somewhat relaxed. You can't be at attention all the time and speaking at fast lengths and going like this. You have to have a flow to what you're doing, to have some relaxation, to generate that sense of confidence in the clients. Energy is expressed through movements. You want people to be excited. I hope you've seen so far as I've been talking, I've been moving. I've never once stopped in one spot. I try to move, and I try to look at who I'm talking to. I'm trying to move my hands. I'm trying to show energy and keep people engaged in my conversation. So when you start these conversations, it's critically important you start with balance in the foundation. Your feet should be under your shoulders. Your weight should be balanced. And your movements should be purposeful. You should always be moving. We'll see people do this a lot. This is unbalanced. This is very unbalanced. This is not strong, and it does not convey confidence subconsciously. The Boy Scout, the fig leaf, these are things that do not create confidence. They don't create confidence. You need to be purposeful in how you stance. You need to have your legs under your shoulders and be ready to communicate and have movements. So your upper body is the confidence part. We want to convey the confidence. You want your shoulders to talk to the folks. So I've been moving, and as I've been looking at the audience and the people, I've been moving my shoulders to everybody. I don't turn my head and try to do this, because it's just like, well, you're kind of important, but not really. These are the more important people. You got to move around and make sure you're constantly connecting to everybody on a regular basis. You want to control the hands. This is going to be the most controversial thing. It's really funny. Dr. Janet Sanders, the sociologist I've worked with, she talks about the strike zone. The strike zone is between your chest and your pocket. You should always have one hand free in that zone. I always have a remote control because I'm doing presentations, so I always have a remote control in that zone. This sounds odd, but if you watch powerful politicians, great speakers, the Ronald Reagans, the Bill Clintons, Obamas, the powerful speakers, they always have a hand in this zone. And they always do the thumb over the fist thing. You'll see that a lot in politicians. But they always have the hands in the zone because it creates confidence. So training some of our architects, I know one architect in particular said, I can't do that, it can't be done. And he got up there and he faked his hand, had it all straight and strong, and this is so stupid, I can't do this. And he started talking, he's a great presenter, and he started using his other hand. I'm like, you do it automatically. It's part of how you speak. So keeping a hand in the strike zone is critical. And you want to have the strong gestures, you want to be able to point to things, but you want to keep movements and keep people's eyes on you all the time. People lose their attention span every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, you're trying to recapture them. And hand movements, energy, power brings them back. And you want to look at little things like fingers, how you use certain kinds of fingers. Doing this, while innocent, was reminiscent of a school teacher yelling at you. You were late to class, you didn't do your homework, you didn't do this. It's a subconscious symbol. Use your hands like this, big ideas. Earlier I talked about the 3 big ideas in presentation development. Hands up is non-confrontational. So whenever you're doing this, you always find your safety in your stance. You can lose your spot. You can 1 minute catch yourself, you're leaning. Correct yourself, go back to the stance. Go back to your confidence pose. Have your one hand loose in that strike zone. When you're going to start your presentation, when you end the presentation, and when you're on view and not speaking, you should always be in that pose. Feet under your shoulders, in a confident position. People always ask, well, if I'm not speaking and my colleagues are, I should be sitting down. No, you should not. You should be all standing, so there's not an up and down, jumping up and down like Jack in the Box kind of thing going on. And you should all be confident in your pose, looking at the speaker and looking at the audience. You should be moving back and forth, corroborating the power of what's being spoken. Whenever you lose your way, the coaches always tell us, get back to base. So if you find yourself, hands behind your back doing this, just get back to base. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. No one's going to beat you. Keep the audience focused on you. So your client should be talking to you. The visuals are just visuals. I had designers that would sit back and do nothing but point at screens and talking about the projects. You're losing them. You need them to be listening to you. This is wallpaper. This is just fun frou-frou stuff. They need to hear your stories. This is incidental. Don't skewer the audience. We worked with a design builder contractor that literally would stare at one person the entire time. The entire presentation he did like this. It was one client out of 5 that he felt so uncomfortable, he couldn't take it. I mean, if I stared at you the entire time for 30 minutes, eventually you'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? So don't stare at people. Keep your voice strong. You don't want to be monotone. You don't want to have this little, Bueller, Bueller. You want to be strong in your voice and have inflection, up and down, a lot of energy in your voice. You don't want to scream at people and scare them. I've had that before. I had a sustainability consultant partner with us who shouted so much it scared us. You want to start your presentation with impact. We talked about that hook as far as the written story, but you want to start in your base. You want to get up on the stage, pause for 2 seconds. That pause brings everyone's attention right to you. Why is there nothing being said? Why is he not speaking? 2 seconds. 2 seconds when you stop and nothing happens. All eyes will turn to you. You'll gather all the attention. Power your hook. Get their attention right off the spot and then go forward. Don't rush your endings. I can't tell you how many people do this all the time. They rush their endings. They go so fast, they don't spend the time to close out strong. They'll almost sound apologetic. As you're ending a presentation, they'll be, well, yeah, so this is the close of the presentation, and it's, well, thank you so much. I appreciate being here. This is great. I guess that's all I got. I can't tell you how many presentations I see where people do that. They sit back and they stop, and they don't give their all to finish out the conversation. They don't end with something strong. They just speed to the end and get out of there because they want to get off the stage as fast as they can. That hurts your potential to do this. That hurts your conversation piece. You need to make sure that when you're going to end your conversations and end the presentations, you end with impact. You pause those 2 seconds. You get everyone's attention. You end with that hook, that reiterate that first moment that you start that presentation. You start with that moment and you end with that moment. You bring back that benefit to the client. That hook is not, oh, we are a 20-person firm, a 400-person firm, a 60,000-person firm. It's not about we. You end strong with the value proposition that you're bringing to the table for that client. That's how you end the presentations. And when you're done with the end, 2 seconds silence before you ever say, I'm open for questions and answers. Don't rush that question and answer. Let them process that hook. Let them process that close before you get to the end. Make sure you recognize that not every presenter has to be a robot or perfectly aligned. When I train architects and engineers in my company, they all say, well, we can't be you, Ignacio, we're not you. You shouldn't be me. You should be a lot better looking than me. Be yourself. Be yourself. Find your passion and explore your own passion. Be unique. You have something to offer. You have something to give. You have to have confidence in yourself that you're bringing something to the table. You don't have to be a professional speaker. You just have to have confidence in yourself that what you have to say has value. If you can understand that, and every architect and engineer on stage should have value as they're talking to a client, they should have confidence in that value. They can be themselves. A great presentation we went to one time, we had incredible speakers, at least like 5 or 6 different speakers, and each one had a different style. We had a powerful, powerful person that talked about compliance with certain issues, and he actually made compliance interesting. I mean, federal compliance, it's like, that's misery, but he made it actually interesting. Then we had interior designers speak with a completely different tone and set an imagination in play. They both had the mechanics correct. They both moved. They both had purposeful movements. They both had power in their stance. They both had confidence, but they each had different styles. They each were unique to themselves. So you don't have to be this perfect person or professional speaker. But the big part of all that, you have to rehearse. You have to rehearse. You cannot be successful in presentations without rehearsing. People will tell you, well, I'm better if I just wing it. And trust me, I have had to wing quite a few things in my day from time to time. But you're better as a team when you collectively understand what each person brings to the table. You're better as a team when you understand what people are going to start and stop and give a part of their conversation. You're better as a team when you can help the other person who might get stuck or forget something important, or you can help to come to the rescue. You're better rehearsing to get rid of those ums, those likes, those so's, those You rehearse those. You rehearse those. That's how that goes away over time. You don't rehearse by yourself. You don't rehearse in a closet. You don't say, oh, I'm doing it at home. I'll come back in the morning. I'll be fine. Just give me my 5 minutes or my 10 minutes. That breaks chemistry. When you're on a stage and you've got 4 or 5 folks dealing with a client, you have to have chemistry. We lost a wonderful project that we should have won easily because our team refused to rehearse. And one guy in particular said, I'll do the whole thing. I got to control it. I just need 5 minutes of your time to talk about the org chart, and your 5 minutes is about the quality control process, and I'll do everything else. And the feedback, the debrief, when we thought we had this thing locked up was, you all look like a bunch of strangers. And the only way to kill that strangeness is by having chemistry. By having chemistry is by rehearsing. You must rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So I don't know if we have enough time. I don't know where we stand right now. About 15 minutes? We do exercises, so I won't do it to you. I'll open up for Q&A instead. But what I try to do with the exercises is something you can do with your staff. I would argue that you should bring people up on stage or make them be part of your presentation process. I've done things with our team where I bring a small group and I'll say, okay, this is about your style, not your content. So I won't question their content. I don't care what they say. It's about how they stand, how they present themselves, how kind of confidence they provide to others. And I make them present for 2 minutes or a minute just based on their body. How are they using the body language? They can do their the best parts of their hometown. They can talk about where they were born. I really don't care. It's just their body language. If they can become comfortable with that hand in the strike zone, the walking, the shoulders to the audience, the eyes and eye contact, they'll become extraordinary, I would say performers, but it kind of is a performance, presenters over time. And this is what helps them grow professionally. So I would tell you, work with your staffs, have them do these exercises, have them present. Oftentimes we bring emerging professionals as our jury as we're rehearsing. And we'll present and we'll say, what did you hear? Did you hear our 3 big ideas? Or did you just hear about our org chart and our resume? Did you understand what benefits we brought to the client? And the benefit of that is oftentimes they're part of the company, they're trying to help you win, they're pretty honest, and say where you went off the rails, or, hey, Ignacio, you talk too fast. I'm like, what? I don't talk too fast. So they'll give you the critique all the time, but they're also watching you and learning from you. And they're knowing that this is their career path. They're gonna be on stage one day. They need to understand what goes in this process. And they need to humanize that even the most gifted presenter is gonna make a mistake as they rehearse. So this makes it all part of the process. So I would say, I'm not gonna pull you up on stage and try and make you do this right now. I think it's a little too much. but think about that with your companies. Think about that with the emerging professionals. Bring people up and have them do this. Do a little lunch and learn and have them present their hometown or the best features of their hometown, or the best features of the university they went to, or whatever inane topic you want, but talk to them about their body language and how that body language is important to display confidence. The last thing on the agenda was to talk about debriefs. We all talk about debriefs all the time. Again, from the business of architecture, you have to understand where you go right and where you go wrong. We all know about debriefs after a loss. We all get the clients and we go to the debriefs. This is simple, obviously predictable information. You want to make sure you're listening intently to any kind of a debrief. You want to try to read between the lines. But the big part of the debrief and the loss is bring someone else with you. Have 2 people in the room to try to understand or hear what the other doesn't hear. I can't tell you how many times I've walked away from a debrief where I heard, oh gosh, they really did not think our approach to sustainability was strong. And the other person goes, oh, I heard that they really didn't like our project manager. Like, really? I didn't hear that. Bring people to the table so they can listen intently. Those are the obvious ones. And try to ask questions that have comparisons. And when we do, they often won't tell you the truth in a debrief after a loss. They often won't tell you exactly where you went off the rails. They want to be polite. Oh, you were so close. Oh, it was just a tough decision, but oh goodness, you were right there. You were right there. Compare it. Okay, what did the other firm do well that you thought was the differentiator? What happened to the other firm? Ask comparisons, and how did we measure up in those areas? Try to create a situation where they can actually give you something you can work with. What was different about the winning team's proposal that set them apart? How did they rise above that conversation? And then ask what did work. What were the parts that we did that you saw work well? Did you hear our message? Did you get our 3 points, our business points, our ideas? Ask them specifically what they heard to see if you are getting your message across. Because they all take notes, and they'll often have to refer back to those notes. I do this all the time. I advocate everyone should do this. After you get a debrief, that person takes time to meet with you and tell you what you did wrong, and it puts them in an awkward position. Send a thank you note. And I will tell you, all the technology in the world does not replace a handwritten note. Handwritten notes count. So I would send a handwritten note to every client. But the better debrief is after the win. So how many people here actually do debriefs after you win? One. I see one hand. Debriefing after a win is far more powerful than debriefing after a loss. After you won, they're gonna tell you everything. They're gonna be so honest. They're gonna say, wow, you guys won it, you kicked ass, you did great, but Rick, oh man, don't bring Rick Logan again, I don't like that guy. They're gonna be so honest with you. They're gonna tell you the truth because you've won the job. They're unshackled. They can be honest and effective with you. It also shows and demonstrates to them that this relationship is critically important. My being here and asking you what we did well is because I care. I care about this relationship. I'm gonna kick this job off right. Debrief after the win. Ask questions that are powerful about if this is the way you do all your presentations. Learn about their future, learn about their processes. What was it about our team that stood out? When we won the job, what was it that really stood out? What can we improve? Ask those questions and get them engaged in the process. And then go back to your team. I'll tell you, win or lose, whatever debrief content you get back, you gotta pull that team together and share the good, the bad, and the ugly. I can't tell you how many times we don't do that because we're scared to hurt someone's feelings. We don't hurt someone's feelings like, well, the only way you're gonna build is when you share the reality. This didn't work. Yep, didn't work, so we need to change it. We have to do something better. We have to rehearse better, we have to change some things better, do something different, but team building only encourages if they understand what the issues were. So we've talked a little bit about the approach, about knowing your audience and knowing the ideas, what's going on there, knowing their hot buttons, how to develop your presentations to have content that resonates with business issues that are basically about stories, that capture the stories, that don't get muddied with a lot of garbage on slides, a lot of stuff that just muddies all the waters and doesn't get your message out. We've talked about style, about making sure that when you're presenting with style, you're presenting with confidence. You're using your body language to provide those nonverbal messages that empower you, that get your message aside. And we talked a little bit about the debrief process and what's critical about the debrief process, especially after a win. Those 4 elements are about the communication process that helps you get a client to understand and feel you and connect with you. At the end of the day, what you want them to do is trust you. You are there to establish a layer of trust where they're say, okay, I'm gonna give you $40 million of my money to create something wonderful. And I'm trusting you that you will know how to design this that'll create a better patient experience, a better learning experience, a better ROI for my hotel, public, private, doesn't matter. You are trying to create trust. And those are the 4 abbreviated moments to try to get you to that point in the business of architecture, if you will. I hope you've enjoyed this experience. This is about creating trust and about demystifying that element of communication. So now I'm open to any questions.
Does this work? Be careful giving me a microphone, I tell jokes. And to that point, I just want to add 4 things to what you're talking about here, because I think they're important. When I hire a new person to come into my firm, the very first question I ask them when they sit down in front of me for an interview is tell me a joke.
Ooh, that's great.
And it really is a wonderful indicator of what kind of a person that you have. You have a sense of humor, they have a style, they can remember a story, they can be excited. Sometimes they scare the hell out of you. The second thing is a book that I think is worth reading that talks about all this. It's a book called Made to Stick.
Oh, yes. Yes.
By, I think it's Dan and Chip Heath. And it is a really wonderful book, and it really simplifies a lot of the ideas that you brought forward here. The third thing is, how many fellows do we have in the room? Few? Okay. One of the things, the first thing you had to do is in preparing your application to the College of Fellows was write a 35-word statement that summarized your entire career. Okay? I've discovered that this is probably the most useful tool in developing a presentation, because if you can take what it is that you're doing as a project and reduce it down to 35 words, not only can you remember it, because 35 words is about 40 seconds, less than 40 seconds of talk, but at the same time, it gives them everything they need to know about the project. And you use that as your hook, you use it as your punch out at the end, it becomes the tool. And finally, the last thing, I'm going to teach you a new word because I make up words. It's called proeminate. You can't look it up in the dictionary, it doesn't exist. I made it up myself, as I do lots of other works when I get frustrated.
Trademark.
I don't even trademark because I want it. It's shareware. Everybody. And what that means is, as organizations, as individuals, as companies, we need to understand not our weaknesses, but our strengths, our passions, the things we do well, our unique character, all of the things that make us different, the differentiation piece. Once we know what those are, we then have to take them and look at the company or organization for whom we are going to plan to work, who we're presenting to, and understand where their pain is. And when you research and find out where their pain is, you then translate your strengths and passions and interests and capabilities into how you can answer those pains. And you proeminate, everybody's heard the word preeminent, but not proeminate, because you project yourself into what those issues are. And then you have the answer. You have the differentiator. You have the way of delivering the idea that you've talked about and the method in which you talked about doing it here. So I didn't have a question. I just had some additional answers, and I think it helped
all good.
Add to the texture of this presentation. Thank you.
Ignatius? Hey. So I'm Ed Duggar. I'm going to preface this. I'm an acoustical consultant, and I get asked to a lot of interviews and everything else from people all over the place. It's always amazing to me that I'm there with 25 people in the background. You know, we've got, the fuel supply sub-consultant and kitchen supply consultant and everything else. Do you have to, in your opinion, do you need to bring this whole entourage with you on stage?
Well, no, I wouldn't say everybody on stage. Would most practices, if I have a big interview, a big project that has a series of different consultants that are all specializations, oftentimes what I would recommend is your key individuals that are going to be presenting the presentation, maybe there's 4, maybe there's 6, they should be in front. Your specializations, I would bring them in the back. And if there was an issue, if there's a comment, a conversation, and you didn't know, but the person who is responsible for building maintenance is going to be a juror, that wasn't known before, like you didn't know your whole audience. Well, maybe it's important to have someone who understands the kitchen equipment, that's going to understand how to maintain the kitchen equipment, can respond to a question. So I would bring them in the back, but I wouldn't bring them on stage. I wouldn't bring them all on stage.
Thanks.
And I want to add one thing too about personalities. I love the idea of asking a joke. Recognize too that not everyone needs to be an extrovert to be a good speaker. Introversion is just grabbing energy from being alone, while extroverts grab energy from being with people. Both can be effective, powerful speakers. You don't need to be an extrovert. People confuse that and think, well, you're an extrovert, you're a great speaker. I know plenty of people who are introverts that are phenomenal speakers and big public speakers. They just drive energy from being alone afterwards, that's all. So don't judge anyone by being introvert or extrovert.
Hi, Ignacio. A couple of years ago, we interviewed for a continuing services contract with one of the local nearby school districts. And I wanted to take a couple of my project architects with me, and so we went through a presentation. We didn't rehearse it over and over again. And one of my project architects, who is a very outgoing, probably the most bubbly personality in our office, when they got the microphone in their hand, became terrified. It was the strangest thing to see. And I guess my question for you would be, are there any like public speaking, classes that can be taken that I could send staff to? Like I know like there's the Dale Carnegie classes, that sort of thing. Are there any specific over the years that you found to be, very helpful?
Well, yeah, there's things like Toastmasters. You can join a Toastmasters group. That's an easy one. You can do that. Think outside the box, though. Bring those individuals to an AI chapter meeting and make them present your firm. Make them introduce yourself. Make them get a microphone and stand in front of colleagues and say something about your organization. Bring them to a ULI event or a NAOP or a crew, or there's so many professional associations. Show up, be there, and have those individuals rehearse that moment. Get over that fear, recognizing once you get that microphone, the world's not coming to an end. It's not going to open up and swallow you. You're okay. You'll survive. It'll be okay. But use everything you can at your disposal so you don't always have to pay money for it. But Toastmasters is one we use a lot. Okay.
Hi. I appreciate you sharing the strategies with bringing in staff of all experience levels into sort of low-risk opportunities to build those skills, and really driving home the importance of practice. My question for you is, we all know it's not only important that you practice, but how you practice. So could you maybe share a little bit more about some of the strategies you use at your firm
Sure.
to prepare?
So I'll tell you, one of the things with the practicing, Graceworks is a great coach. We've hired Graceworks in the past, and they'll tell you the ugly rehearsal, and they'll name it out loud on purpose so that everyone feels, okay, so I guess it's okay to make mistakes. It's your first time rehearsing. Of course it's gonna be okay to make mistakes. So we do the ugly rehearsal where everyone trips, everyone stops, people go, I'll say something better, oh, that was stupid, and it's okay. No timing, you don't time at the beginning. You need to run through a couple of times to get the weirdness out and the kinks out, or that didn't feel right, or that didn't sound right, or I shouldn't be talking about this. That should be Cindy, and this should be Joe, and I shouldn't be doing this. Those ugly rehearsals are important. And I'd bring in staff as far as the evaluation of the process. I'd bring them once you have it more gelled. Once you have the thing more gelled and you've gone through your ugly rehearsals a couple times and you organize it, then you start getting into the timing process and everything else. That's when I would bring staff in to watch and critique and let them see this is the future. Nope, sorry, over there.
Hi, Deborah Lepton, most recently from TLC.
Yep.
I wanted to really reiterate your comment on Toastmasters. That was probably the #1 thing that I did to enhance my skills as a young architect. 40 years later, this group still connected, still giving emails back and forth, learning about what people are doing. And for all of you that have never been, they have a program that is book by book. So you learn in a stage by stage process. And once you become a competent Toastmaster, like I am, you can go on to a number of books which have to do giving funny talks if you need to learn a joke. I'm not a joke person, but you can do that, or dealing with a difficult audience. Who here has never dealt with a difficult audience, even in their project presentations? So it is an incredible tool for any level of person, and I still, actually retired, had gone back to some Toastmasters classes. So it's a fabulous recommendation.
It's a great group. It's a really great group. Rick? I can hear him.
First of all, I'm disappointed the client didn't like me.
I was making that up because they all love you. They all love you.
And second of all, I was one of those people that had a really bad fear of getting on stage. And one of the ways that I developed to get rid of that fear was to join a musical band after I got out of college. And there's nothing worse than making a mistake on a stage playing music. So you're forced to rehearse, you're forced to present yourself properly, and that helped me get rid of the fear. But the last thing I want to ask you is, I'm going to ask you whether communicating a great idea in a fashion that you just presented to us would overcome what people have been doing lately with a nuclear option, which is actually bringing a design to a presentation. And it's becoming more and more of a practice for people to do that. A couple of times I have been able to overcome it by basically saying, you know, it's the wrong thing for me to bring a design to a presentation when I don't even know what your program is yet. But I just want to get your take on it.
It's a tough situation. We have done both ways, I'll be honest. We've done it both ways. We went into an interview for a big university project where we didn't design anything. We talked about the potentials and the ideas. We tried to employ the strategies. We knew the hot buttons. We crafted stories. And in comes another firm with full laser cut models and won because it was, ooh, that's sexy, that's really cool. No clue if it works. There's no program, but it was sexy and awesome and look, they're done. You know, they're finished, and we lost. So it's a double-edged sword. I would tell you, I would prefer, and more than not, we don't do design work. What we do is we might do a site analysis. We might do the potentials. We try to tell stories. We try to show imagery of past projects where we employed, you know, a dominant entry and an axial relationship. We show how things worked other places, so we're not actually designing, but rather talking about those critical issues of the site that could create an incredible space for the client. But there are times where we are called into, and we know the competition. We know who we're against, and we'll design. We'll come up with little vignettes. We don't work it all out, and we purposely say it's not worked out. But we'll come up with vignettes about the ideas, showing the potentials that could be possible. So it's a tough call. I can't say if all the architects in the world, you know, advocated that they wouldn't do that, we'd all be in great shape. But if they all didn't undercut each other too, we'd all have better fees and the world would be a better place. So it's a tough situation, but I know that my company, we've done it both ways. Most recently, some of the biggest wins we've had no design work at all. They were all stories. They were all amazing stories. We won a not $1 billion, sorry. That's an exaggeration. It was 2 different resorts that totaled close to $1 billion, but neither one of them we walked in the door with pure design. We walked in with vignettes of ideas, of a potential room, of a potential space, but never the whole concept. And we told stories. We told imaginative stories, and that got them engaged.
We have one more back here.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah, excellent presentation. My question is, what is the biggest adjustment whenever you have to go virtual? Whenever you have to do all this that you're saying, but just go virtual, and you're not able to read the room and see how you're connecting with your audience?
Virtual is very tough. So we worked with our team. Obviously, COVID was a big change agent. You know, changed everything. So we worked with our team for a couple things. We were doing interviews. We wanted people to be as emotional and passionate as they could be on screen. So we asked them to raise their computers off their table, stand, sit it back. We have devices. You can put the little ear devices that you talk on the phone. Use those. You're not using the microphone from your computer, so your voice can connect well with the people. But stand, even if you're not moving. You can't move because the camera's in one little spot, so I gotta stay where I am. But use your hands. Make sure they can see at least your upper body and you're conveying your message. Try your best. But the flip side of that is you can try as best you can, but you don't know what viewports that they have set up on their end, because Teams has different viewports, Zoom has different viewports. We have tried to tell our clients, please hit this setting. We try to set the stage for them so they know that the speaker will always be on only one image of the speaker only at a time versus a whole gallery of people. But you have no idea, you have no control of what they're seeing or how they are controlling their technology. But you should still stand. You should still have movements. You should sit upright. I did have a rehearsal with a team where I had a colleague sitting in a chair and literally leaning back. I'm like, okay, so your body language says, I am bored to tears and I don't want to be here. You know, if I can see that, I'm pretty sure the client can see that. So sit up straight. If you're not going to stand, sit up straight, hands up, be focused, smiling, energetic. Don't yawn, don't drink and eat. You know, be focused on what you're doing on the screen, because it's just like, just like it should be, just like you're in person. So my best advice to everybody was lift the screen up, lift the camera up so you're standing. Caution on your background. Keep a clean background, not a messy background. I'm not an advocate of the fake backgrounds, the blurry stuff, because we were in a presentation for a project. I'll never forget it. And our business development director here in West Palm, she was talking and she backed up a little bit. Her head disappeared. It was the most eerie thing. She's still talking, but her head's gone. And that was really, really weird. So I'm not a big fan of the fake screens. I prefer just have a real background, non-cluttered, clean, stand, use your hands, try to get them engaged, but it's really, really hard on the video side. Do I integrate videos into my presentations? Yes, absolutely. I did not hear, this is a simple one. Like this is 3 different presentations combined into one for the 1 hour we had. But yes, absolutely, we've integrated videos and new technologies. I don't use Prezi because that just makes people dizzy, just things flying around everywhere. Clients are like, whoa, I'm going to throw up. but try to lessen this, to be honest, lessen this. Video's fantastic. This can turn off and you can talk, that's even better. But I think I'm out of time. I see the hook back there. Thank you all for your attendance and for your participation.